We're back. This is the Coverage Your Podcast. We're going to take a little bit different tack today and discuss something that I think is vitally missing in the business world, but for those that listen to the Coverage Your Podcast in our specific realm in insurance, finance, banking, insurtech, investments and technology and all of that. Trust. I've brought it up before, and if you follow me on social media, you know that I spend a little bit of time talking about it. But what better way to talk about it than bring someone who does it every single day, kind of lives it and preaches it, and has a unique perspective that I think can help professionals and corporations think about it in a particularly different way that can actually help in business, in sales, and in other areas. Alon Zaibert, welcome to the Coverage Your Podcast.
Thank you very much, Nick. Happy to be here.
Thanks. I love the little tagline underneath your name in LinkedIn, Master of Emotional Relevance. And you even got that trademarked, which is beautiful.
Isn't that amazing that I created a term in the English language, right? It's me, it's mine.
Yes, and as a backdrop, you are Israeli, so English is a second language, but you speak it fluently and beautifully. I love the accent.
Okay.
And you actually came up with something that was unique, which is very hard to do given like the hundreds of years that we've had English, that not every word has been trademarked in some way or another. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Alon, I in all of these podcasts that I do, I always give my guests a little bit of soapbox for an elevator pitch. Who are you? What do you do? And why is it important? Why are we having this discussion?
Yeah, I always pause and think, who am I? And why are we doing this? So you mentioned emotional relevance, and about 3 years ago, I started writing about emotional relevance, and I started writing a blog, sharing use cases and stories. But it all came from people who got to know me in the corporate world and friends, and have seen me interact with other people, right? And along the years, people who have seen me work and interact with other people would say, how did you do that? Or how did you get away, with that? How did you get away? How did you get them to feel that? How did you get that results? And for me, it was all natural. In a nutshell, what it came down to is I say out loud what a lot of other people think. And it almost get to a point where it gives them permission. Everybody look like, he did that. He got away with it. Okay, we can do that as well. And I'm not talking about anything, drastic, but it's the human element of things. So, in a way, I've gone on a mini crusade, to bridge that gap between what corporate is dictating to us as human beings, right? Which is, the guidelines, the rules, the dance in the corporate world, how to behave, versus the innate human needs that are built in all of us as human beings, which relates to how we feel, what emotions are, and that our need to be connected, our need to be socially accepted, which then comes to trust, being remembered, and all of those elements that I use when I work with my customers and executives on emotional relevance. Just to finish it up by saying, Nick, I didn't invent anything except for the term, right? Emotional relevance is based on neuroscience, psychology, and emotional intelligence. The good news for me is that now, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, right? That's the unfortunate piece. But the fortunate piece is I just go every day now saying, I told you so, because the pandemic triggered, people to be more emotionally open and more emotionally sharing and more, less corporate, because we are in Zoom land, right? And in Zoom land, we are by default more intimate, right? You're in my home now. I'm in your home, even though I see that you have a beach background, but it's more intimate. It's us. It's one-on-one.
Yeah.
We don't have to dress up to go to work, right? We don't have to be careful of what we say in the hallway, right? So it gets us to be more us. Going back to that circle that I started, basically what I do is I give people in the workplace permission to be more them.
Yeah. And that's a very compelling thing that we want to dig in. And by the way, so I don't think this would ever be allowed. Let's see if I can get it. There's my knee, right?
Shorts. You wear
Shorts
shorts.
every day. I do live in Florida, so it's, it's kind of par for the course
Yeah.
here. But yeah, like it's amazing how much the world has changed, and that I told you so moment has happened for a lot of people. We've been a lot of the peers that I work with have been really pounding the table for years about work from home and allowing that sort of flexibility. And it's funny like how rapidly it happened and how everyone just sort of accepted like, oh, I guess I guess you don't have to wear a tie. I guess you can grow a beard. I got everyone had COVID hair,
Yeah.
right? For a while, it was kind of like a thing. I still kind of have COVID hair. It's coming back. And yet I would say employees really stepped up. Um, and this is something that I had seen long ago when my first taste of working from home. I had the opposite problem of what I think a boss, someone who has workers that report to them would think when you allow someone to work from home. You think like, well, I don't know what they're doing, right? How do I know that they're actually
Yeah.
getting work done? And I had the opposite problem where I was working too much.
Yeah.
And I think everyone else is starting to realize that as well, is that
Right.
truly you have the opposite problem.
So,
It's hard to
so
shut things off, but
let me use that real quick as a segue to, trust, right? Which is what we're talking about, because it's all about trust eventually. Do
yeah.
I trust my colleague or my employee to work enough hours to produce enough without me looking at them, right? Do I?
It's silly, right? Like in reality, that someone who's leading a team would have to like literally be watching them
Yeah, but
is
listen,
silly.
you look at historically how the whole, you know, corporate world has evolved, and people, going to offices and, putting that little card in the clock to make sure that it says
Yeah.
where they're working. It all, if you think about the American society in general, it's got to be managed somehow, right? That's how it
Yeah.
started. Entrepreneurialism started, you know, I remember when I went to school first time ever for entrepreneurship class. That was, late 1990s, the late 90s. This is when entrepreneurship kind of terminology, started to be blend in. And now, working from anywhere because of the technology, because of online world and everything else is being more accessible. So I think trust takes a little different
Yeah.
angle as well. Um, it's very interesting, Nick. I did a survey about, I don't know, a year and a half ago with some organizations that I've worked with, and some of it is around trust. Just to recap, people ask me emotional relevance. What's the purpose of it? The underline of it is really two things: is to be remembered and to establish trust, right? Ongoing trust. And we'll talk about what it means in a second. But I did a survey a couple of years ago with some organizations, and we asked the group that we worked with, tell us about each one else, everyone else on the group, tell us two personal things about the other people in the group, right? They're all colleagues, they're all working together for months. We did it with groups of 6 to about 13, 14 people, right? And the answers were by far very superficial. Oh, they like coffee. They love cats, right? They live in, they like the Red Sox,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
They, they things like that, right? But recently, I've done the survey again with groups that I've worked with, and the answers have changed, right? Because it's no longer just they like coffee, right? But they like drinking coffee in a glass mug, and they like it very hot, right? So it gets to that level. They actually, lost a loved one recently, and because the environment is allowing us to do that, but it's just allowing us. We've always been emotional creatures. We've always been, looking for the connection, but we haven't been giving the permission to do so
Yeah.
in the corporate world. And it pisses me off, Nick. I'm sorry, I get passionate about it. It pisses me off because when you go to talk to people and sell or meet with colleagues or customers or partners, doesn't matter who right now, and you meet with them face to face before the pandemic, everything in the room in front of everybody had guidelines. You're not supposed to cross the line. God forbid you say something. God forbid you hug somebody. I finished a presentation a couple of years ago when I worked for this in the corporate world still, and I finished a presentation somewhere in the Midwest, doesn't matter. And we said our goodbyes after 2 hours presentation, and we really established a relationship there. And you could tell that some of the people that before we left were coming in to appreciate you, and their natural instinct is to give you a hug. And two of them, because I'm a hugger, right, we literally hugged each other. This is a prospect, brand name prospect. We hugged. Okay, now they loved it, everybody else loved it, no problem. But corporate world, so of course there was somebody in the room that then felt uncomfortable about it, whether it because they didn't receive the hug or whether because it was different, right? And it drives me nuts. But that when you take your prospect one-on-one on the side in the hallway, or you meet for dinner later and you talk, all the guidelines are thrown away. All of a sudden you cuss, and all of a sudden you talk about family. And why is that? It's because we need that. So what I'm saying is, why not blend it? Nick, why really tell me why not? Because it's unprofessional? Why? So make it professional. Because we've been told for years that it's, guidelines. But the thing is that when you do that, first of all, it's more natural for us. But when you do that, openness level goes up. Trust level goes up. I want to do business more with you because I trust you more and I open up. Closing rates go up, right? But go ahead.
No, because you hit on something there that I think is very important. That there's an element of authenticity, to it when when that someone has a family or they've had this a child that has some sort of health condition. Like, you step into their world and you get to know them a little bit more, you can start to connect some dots around them and who they are and how they behave and what they've been able to overcome. It does increase the level of trust that you have. You prefer to work with someone that you understand a little bit better, or has characteristics that you admire and things like that. And so I agree with you. Like, why not? Like, there's a level of professionalism there that I think you can add to that. We were talking before we started, and we were talking about trust as like this soft, mushy thing, right?
Well, because we've been programmed. My daughter plays volleyball. She made the varsity team this year as a freshman in her high school team, and I'm one of those parents on the stands that I yell, go crazy. Crazy, I don't cuss, I don't, but I go crazy. I'm emotionally and I'm loud. I'm emotional, I'm loud, etc. I live in a pretty waspy area. Okay, there are guidelines there, right? I don't know if you've seen the movie Bad Moms. Similar, right? So kind of like that. The beginning of the season, all the parents, first game, right? Like, oh, ooh, this guy is a little too much, right? By the end of the season, we have all the parents, we have chants together, and everybody is, and the day of the game, everybody goes on the group chat and go crazy and put memes and stuff. All I did was I given them permission to be them. We're still professional about it, right? And we talk sometimes to other parents at the other teams, right? When they come, first few minutes, they hear us, we're loud, and they're like, but then you talk to them and like, we would love to be part of that, right? Same thing. So let's do a little exercise that and by the way, just for the record, I don't, go to my customers and say, oh, at the end of the meeting, go hug them. Jump on them and hug them, right? That will give you trust. No.
You just be authentic.
Let's
you are, and
let's do a little exercise.
Sure.
You and I have known each other for a couple of months, not too much. Okay.
A few months, a little longer than that.
A few months, but we don't really know each other well, Nick.
Right.
We don't. I mean, I think you like me for what you've seen. I like you for what I've seen, but really, altogether, we have a few hours of communication. 1 to 10, level of trust that you and I have right now, instinctively, if I come now to talk to you about work-related stuff, because that's where we're trying to kind of relate to that. Work-related stuff, 1 to 10, I'm trying to sell you something, or I want to offer you something, or you want to offer me. 1 to 10, where would you say our trust is? Roughly 5, 6, maybe 4?
I would say 6 because I do know you a little bit. So I'm at least going to hear. I'm going to listen to it to see if it rings true. Whereas the same message given from someone I don't know, I shut down.
Yep.
Immediately.
Okay. Awesome. So let's pause for 1 second, right? Put it at 6. And let's talk about establishing trust. And then we'll move to ongoing trust because there's a big difference. And first of all, what is trust in the world of corporate and the world of business? It basically comes down to, do I believe you that what you say is real? Do I believe that you'll bring benefit to me in our work relationship? Do I feel, right, that I don't need to, that I can be as authentic as possible and that you are being authentic? Now, how do you get there? Obviously, there are a few ways. One is your own reputation. If you look online and you see that I have been doing this and that, other people say that about me, right? That automatically gives me some credibility, which establishes a level of trust. But not until you actually experience, and in emotional relevance methodology, I talk about emotionally experience, right? Me and what I do for you, only then when I call trust is being established. You wanted to say something?
No, I want to dig into that. I want to dig into that further because I think you sort of hit on something in the way that I describe trust as well. And I think that's very important because I think most people who are listening to this are going to say, oh, I know what trust is, right? And you hit on something that's very important. So in my case, right, let's say I'm selling something to you. You just said, oh, I go on LinkedIn and I checked in my LinkedIn profile. My business is in insurance, right? Let's say I'm selling you heavy machinery, Caterpillar, excavator, right? Why would I be trustworthy to you? you're going to look through my LinkedIn. I might be a good guy. You might say, Nick's a good guy. I like him. But in that particular scenario, I am not trustworthy. I cannot deliver trust to you because you just scan through my LinkedIn profile. Like, Nick knows not. There's nothing that shows that Nick knows anything about excavators. He
So there
doesn't
are a
know
couple,
anything about
Nick,
rocket science. He doesn't know anything about fixing electrical equipment. The only thing I could bring to the table that would really raise level of trust would be if I was probably selling you something that was related to insurance, because I have an entire career around that. That would at least raise the level of trust. And
it will.
I think that's a very important aspect to this.
Well, absolutely. Look, there are a couple of things here. One, if you're not related to what you're selling or you don't have experience, that's going to be hard to establish trust, right? Just like everything else today, you go to a restaurant, you check out the reviews, right? How much do you trust the reviews or you trust the restaurant, right? You see people that have eaten there show their own pictures versus the website of the restaurant, right? You're looking for a house, you check out the neighborhood, you see reviews, you're looking for a job, you look at Glassdoor today, you see all the feedback, right? So that's the reputation. But there's another thing that you talked about, which is what it is that you're selling. And different services / products require different level of trust from the buyer in order to buy, right? In order for me to buy a pen from you, I don't really need to establish a high level of trust, right? I'll look it up, see the price. I know it works. Great. Next, right? But if I'm buying insurance from you and it's, life insurance or work insurance, doesn't matter what it is, but insurance, now we're getting to some personal. Now we're getting I want to trust my insurance agent, right? So they will be there when I need them. Now we're getting to the emotional piece. And this is why, as a side note, most of my customers, they sell their businesses, service and product, and it's a longer sales cycle, sophisticated relationship that requires high level of trust, right? This is where I bring the most value. So there is, again, establishing trust, and then there's the ongoing. So obviously, if you're selling me a Caterpillar and I'm going to look you up immediately, I'm going to throw you aside and say,
I'm not trustworthy. Like,
not
why
trustworthy
would you
related to what?
trust? Why would you trust me to say, oh, this is the best Caterpillar? I'll use my Donald Trump. This is the best Caterpillar. There's never been a better. Anyways, that's important, right? So because for most of the audience that's listening, I think the vast majority of transactions that do occur for members of my audience here are long sales cycles. So this could be, you know, a insure tech company that's coming in looking to form a relationship with, let's say, a large European reinsurer, and it could take 2 to 3 years for them to finally ink the contract and go through. And so they're, the European reinsurer can't look at the company's website and see, oh, they sell Caterpillars. That's odd, right? They're coming to us to form a insurance relationship, but their website has Caterpillars. So you're right. Like there's that first impression element to it, and then there's like you need to maintain that. I would even push back and say beyond maintain it. Like it is your responsibility to keep feeding it so that it grows and matures beyond just maintain. Instead of keeping
let
it
me talk.
parallel, you have to grow it.
So,
So go,
so
yeah.
so let me talk about that real quick. First of all, today we have multiple channels of communication, right? Phone, Zoom, email, LinkedIn,
Yep.
Messenger. We
Yep.
have, so when we establish a relationship, one of the first thing I work with people is to make every channel of communication, right, impactful, and make it a two-way channel of communication. Establish channels of communication early in the relationship that are two-way channel of communication. Now, how do you do that? You establish something relevant in there. Those are those emotional anchors that I'm referring to. Let's go back to our little scenario and show you an example. We were at 6 and we are just now starting our relationship. Let's say we're talking about you're selling me now insurance because that's what you're selling, and or vice versa. Let's say I'm selling you now some consulting about emotional relevance, relationship, etc. for your customers. You are seeking some guidance and you're not sure, etc. And I know last time we talked, you went on vacation. I think you went to North Carolina, right?
Hmm.
Who did you go with?
Family,
You,
wife, kids,
how many kids?
2,
Do you mind if I ask how old?
4 and 2.
4 and 2.
Hmm.
Did you go hiking or
Yes, every day.
with the 4 and 2?
The 2-year-old was on my back. The 4-year-old was a problem. Yeah, I burned a lot of
Boy,
calories.
girl?
Boy, boy.
They're both boys. Their names?
Harrison and Ollie.
Give me just very quickly one example of a problem which one of them is the 4-year-old?
Harrison.
Harrison's the 4-year-old. Example of a problem. One day you woke up and you're in North Carolina, beautiful views, probably great time of the year, right?
Yes, beautiful.
And you pack your bags and you go on a hike. What happens with Harrison?
He's behind me, just staring, throwing rocks. Like, come on, let's go. So I'm spending all of my time with my arms crossed. Okay, let's go. Okay, let's go. Okay, I'm leaving you. And, whatever tool I have to get him to move faster. And he's taking his damn sweet time.
So now I want to ask you something, Nick. Let's go back to our discussion, the podcast here, real quick. For a few seconds, did you feel it?
Feel what?
You feel the connection?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're
So,
I'm able to brag about my kids and stuff.
so yes, it's a little trick. Yes, it's a little sales mechanism. But one of the things that, because it's a long-term relationship, right, in insurance, like you said, that a year, 2 years, etc., then I teach people to be able to feel comfortable and genuine to ask those questions and actually get to know one another. It's been proven that when you talk about something personal, I have a much higher tendency now to share with you about my kids and about a hike that I had in the past. Okay. So now, point number 1, I can guarantee you that if I ask you right now, a second after you told me the story, shared with us, thank you very much, story about Harrison, that 6 is now probably touching an 8.
I'll say 7.
7, I'll take 7. I'll take 7. 22 seconds, one personal question, and it's at 7, right? So this is one example of little thing, establishing a little trust and what I call emotional anchor. Now, let's go back to the channels of communication. We talked and I told you what I do. You showed some interest. Then let's say it's a Thursday, Tuesday, I'm telling you, I'm going to get back to you Tuesday, let you think about it for a few days. And let's say that I happen to go on a hike during that weekend, or maybe not, doesn't matter. But I'm thinking, and when you said a minute ago that you need to be aware of it and feed that, this is your responsibility to proactively now be thinking about you, Nick, your hike, your needs, Harrison. So I'm thinking, and all of a sudden I'm driving and I see a poster with the word Harrison or something. Now that reminds me of your kid. Guess what? On the email that I'm sending you Tuesday, I'm sending you a picture of that poster, Harrison. What I did there is I triggered that emotional anchor again, right? And I shared with you how much I care. By the way, it happens to me all the time because I'm aware. Today, I have a friend in Dallas. She's amazing, Carrie. never mind, she does coaching and consulting and she's amazing. But her son is crazier. She has a little boy, Nicholas. He's crazy about fans, ceiling fans. Crazy. She actually wrote a children's book about fans. Uh, they opened a new store today down my neighborhood. I drove my son earlier to football practice, and I saw the store and I said, "Oh my God, thank God it's red light because I got to take a picture." And I took a picture. Can you see this?
Yes, Fan City, Dan's Fan City.
Now I'm going to send it to her. She's a friend, right? We sometimes consult one another, etc. But it's the same mechanism. I'm going to send it to her. What is she going to feel when I send it to her?
Yeah, yeah,
Right?
definitely. Yeah,
When I said earlier, emotional relevance is about being remembered and establishing trust.
yeah.
Being remembered.
I want to share a story because your story reminds me. I guess I had been doing something like that for a long time and not even realizing I had been doing it. So in my business, we were dealing with a broker who was, a broker. Is kind of very transactional. She was, I guess, on the surface, she seemed hardened, right? But she's a broker, she's like, move quickly and get me my price and all of this other stuff. And I called her because to apologize for not fulfilling what it is that we were going to do and try to explain ourselves. And I got to know her a little bit, like you said, just like a few seconds. And it was a Friday afternoon, and she was telling me about her chickens. And I said, chickens? Okay. And so I remembered it. And I got to like maybe 3, 4 weeks later, I just happened to remember chickens. And I sent her a little note and I said, hey, can you send me a picture of your chickens?
Yeah.
Right? Her girls, she called them. So she sent me a picture of the chickens. And now we have a running conversation about her chickens. And guess what? She's Is she still hard? Yeah, she's a broker. She's got customers she needs to satisfy, and she has high expectations of us. But does she reflect that hardened, emotions towards us? No, she's much more accommodating. She's much more understanding when we do kind of fall down. We will apologize, but she's much more understanding about it. The dynamics of the relationship have changed because of chickens.
Well, that's exactly. First of all, you stumbled upon it and you just realize now what you've done.
Yeah.
I take that mechanism and I teach people not only to do it, but maintain it and continue with it. So you are happy with it. You established an emotional anchor. And when I say emotional, sometimes people think, no, it doesn't have to be anything big. It's got to be something personal. It's got to be maybe different. But now, how do you utilize it over time and establish new anchors so you can establish through different channels of communication over time? Okay.
Alon, I'm going to stop you there because I think there are going to be a lot of folks that might be listening to this that might be, quote unquote, shy or introverted that may feel very uncomfortable trying to establish that emotional anchor. How would you advise them or counsel them on things that they might be able to do? I have a few ideas on what they might be able to do that it could ease it, but I'd like to get your feedback on that.
First of all, you're right. The 3 pillars of emotional relevance are stand out, make an impact, and get personal. And the get personal one is the most uncomfortable one. Again, because of our society here. I don't know if you're aware, but America here, the US, is one of the top touch phobic societies in the world. Okay. And when I say touch phobic, it's not just physical touch, it's the personal space, it's the mental touch. So we've been taught all these years not to get too close to others, etc. Now, Alon, you come and say, no, get close to them, right? So it's hard. So first of all, it takes practice. It takes practice. I do a lot of practice with my customers. I do a lot of scenarios and case studies and role playing, etc. This is one. Two, there are tricks, elements, right? A lot of times before you go and address a person, a prospect, a customer, etc., and you feel a little uncomfortable, what I do is have people go through in their mind, take 1 minute, and in your mind run a specific scenario. One example is scenario where, let's say it's a Thursday evening, you just finished a long day on the road, traveling, meeting, smiling all day, even though you didn't want to. All you want right now, you finished dinner, it's 8:30 p.m., you're heading to your hotel. All you want right now is a cold beer, Nick, and talk to nobody. Yes, correct?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
You know there's a little bar by the hotel. You walk in, you sit down by the bar, you order the beer. First, emotionally relevant question is, what is your favorite beer? What are you ordering?
You're asking me?
Yeah?
Sam Adams.
Sam Adams. Bottle or a glass?
Depends on the mood. I'm not arrogant, so bottle.
Bottle. Awesome. I want you to think for a second that you're holding the bottle and feel for a few seconds how cold your
Hmm.
hand feels. I really want you to feel it. Then as you're kind of turning around and about kind of, you're already salivating and you're feeling like, you're going to get that drink, that first drink after a long day, you loosen your tie and this guy just walks by you and by mistake bumps into you and you drop the beer on the floor. You're so tired and you look at him, he looks at you and you just chuckle and he signals the bartender, hey, give my new friend here another bottle, another round on me. And of course he looks at you, I'm sorry, and he sits next to you and he says, what's your name? You go, it's Nick. Hi, Nick. I'm Jim. Where are you from? Yeah, I'm from Florida. What do you do? This is the mood you need to be in to be able to imagine, really imagine that you are now talking to a friend. You're very relaxed. You're very calm. You're not trying to sell anything. You're not in that environment because that environment triggers us
Defense.
to be a
Yeah.
certain way.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny that you brought up like the specific example because I was specifically thinking of. I can think of three things, Alon, where it almost doesn't matter what sort of meeting I'm in, right? Investor pitch, um, stakeholder meeting, board meeting. Three things always come up when you travel. It's how'd you get here? Like, did you fly? What airline? What airport? How was the flight? Was it late? What did you go through O'Hare? It all almost always comes up. Where are you from? Almost always comes up. And that links to a whole bunch of other stuff. If you're listening to this and you're shy and introverted, almost everybody follows a sports team. So when I say I'm from Boston, right, or someone says, "Hey, I'm from Chicago," I will say, "Oh, you a Bears fan? Bulls?" Like I immediately and I'm kind of I appear extroverted to people, but I'm really introverted. And
So
so having conversations is emotionally draining, but I know I can always count on that. Like you're, I
let
can
me
see,
interject
I
and
could
tell
see
you.
you're from your LinkedIn, you're in Atlanta. I would ask like, oh, you follow the Falcons? And you might say, no, I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. And I would say, oh, how did that happen? But I think the
How
important
did that
point here
happen?
for,
We were up 28-3 in the third
I,
quarter. How did that happen?
I wasn't going to bring that up. I wasn't going to bring that up, but you know, that's a key element that I want people who are listening to this to sort of grab onto is that it doesn't like that happens in all meetings. And so whether you're asking for money, asking for the sale, like those are conversations that you can have that I think get really swing back to if you can just get comfortable with those basic things, you will establish a level of emotional attachment to them. You may not get the sale. This isn't like, hard close or whatever, but you like you said, like you started with that 1 to 10 ranking. You want to like start inching up and start getting things in your favor, and part of doing that is establishing that emotional
And this is
connection to someone.
and this is where it's the ongoing piece, right? When you share personal stuff on, in an ongoing manner over time, you open up more and more, right? Trust level goes up, like I said, openness goes up. All of a sudden, by the way, you both tend to share more information about the work because your conversation is primarily at work. Yes, you're going to have some personal information. And if you like each other, awesome, go be friends. I'm all for it. But people will share more about work with you, which will help you serve them better, right? Now, you touched something very interesting, which I work with foreign companies about how to sell in American through emotional relevance. Because you mentioned you have customers in Europe, etc. There's a whole new level of establishing trust through intercultural differences, right? And how do you do that? Because one of the things that look, Nick, if nothing else, if people are listening here now and they get bored or they didn't listen, one thing is just be aware. As I mentioned earlier, and you said it yourself, it's there. They ask you where you're from, and don't just take those answers and do nothing with them, right? Save those answers, get to know the people, take down notes because it will come up later, and you're building all this information, right?
Let me ask you, do you have a technique to save information aside from like someone taking notes? Like,
CRM.
do you store that away?
CRM. If you want to scale and you have multiple customers, CRM. Yes, I take notes on the CRM. By the way, it depends which CRM you use, etc. But every CRM has a place for notes, and you can add whatever you want. So I put the date and personal information that I learned. Every conversation, you learn something. Whether
Yeah. I'm thinking of all of the different conversations where I learn about, some with stakeholders or some partners, children's names, things like that.
Nick, if you and I speak in 2 weeks, let's say you call me in 2 weeks and say, hey, I have a partner that is interested to talk to you, etc. And I don't even want to sell you anything, but what if I tell you in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we talk, in a month, and I tell you, hey, Nick, by the way, how's Harrison? Not how's your son.
Yeah, like the difference between those two statements is massive. Massive. Just
Okay.
because it in a very subtle way, you're signaling to me like I meant something. Like
That's
my
exactly.
details were meaningful to you, and you actually, in a way, it made me feel special.
But that's exactly it, right? Being remembered and establish trust. Now, people might say, well, I don't like to get personal. That's fine. Okay, I won't ask you about your kid. But hey, Nick, I just saw yesterday an article about
Yeah.
North Carolina and hiking over there. Look at this. I'll send you a link about that via text or something like that. Again, it makes you feel special. I always tell whoever I work with, make sure that even if it's your 1,000th customer, make sure that they feel like they're the only one. And those are the little things that will make them feel special. We all like to feel hugged. In that way, okay? Not necessarily physically hugged. Some people don't like the hug, fine. But all of us like to feel connected, like to feel accepted, and like to feel special. And this is how we make others feel special. Yes, you have to work at it. Yes, you have to practice. Yes, to be aware. Be aware, right? I learned so many things. Even though you're hosting me, I learned so much about you today. And again, over time, you're building things, and you keep doing those circles that and again, I call them emotional anchors, and going back and triggering that emotional anchor that you established. So it's work, but
Yeah, but
It works.
so if you want to make the sale, if you want to get the investment, if you want the partnership, um, like that's what you have to do. It's you, and I think it's important as well. We're not talking about doing it in a fake way. Like you mentioned, we've both mentioned authenticity. And I
Yes.
think like you can't be trustworthy if you're not authentic. Like let's put it this way: if someone finds out that like you were phony in how you sort of went about, establishing that personal connection, you've kind of blown up. Like you've done more harm. You would have been better off just keeping your mouth shut.
If I came to you and I asked you, hey, how's Harold, your 10-year-old, right?
That wouldn't have been so bad because at least you got the HAR correct. So I knew like, okay, like wow, that's pretty close. If you came back and said, "Hey, how's Randy?" Who the hell's Randy? Like,
Yeah.
wow, that's like you didn't even try. You should have just said, "How's your son?" Right?
But let me give you one more thing here that will also make it super clear for the audience here. I recently changed my insurance agent, right? Car, home, and I looked at 3 suppliers. Eventually, eventually, same coverage, same deductibles, same pricing,
Mhm.
same everything. Subtle changes, subtle, not meaningless changes. How many times in our life, do we go through a point where somebody needs to decide between us and 1 or 2 others, especially when we sell something? All the time.
Yeah. Yep.
All the time. What would make us different? How we made them feel. If they trust us, if
Yeah.
they look at the 3 offers and they say, this is Jim, this is Laura, this is Nick, same pricing, same, hey, but Nick is the guy that he shared with us the story about Harrison and the hiking. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that guy, that's right. That that's the difference.
Can you repeat the 3 pillars? It was stand out.
Make an impact and get personal. And it's always a combination. It's not just one of them.
I can't help but think like I'm hoping that people who are listening to this stayed and held on throughout the whole thing because I think there are nuggets of information here that are extremely valuable, and I think it's um, it's not physics. Like you can't put an equation to it. It's like what you said. You have to kind of roll up your sleeves. Requires elbow grease. You have to put the effort in, but it is a dynamic difference if you can execute on that. If you can make those emotional connections, right, in the way that we've been describing here. This isn't like I'm going to increase my profits, my revenue by 20%. This is magnitudes. This is 2x, 3x, 10x because it's so different, but you have to put the effort in to be able to do that. And I'm hoping people hung on to it because this is useful if you're a broker selling to a customer, a broker trying to get an underwriter to accept the policy, someone selling to an investor, or trying to get an investor to invest in their company, going up, working with a European reinsurer or Bermudian banker, right, to fund something or back something for you. You can't just put up a nice website, right? Like
Nick,
that.
I say it's an unfair advantage. I'll tell you why. You know how sometimes you meet somebody, you don't remember the name, you know them from somewhere. You met them 10 years ago. Again, you can't remember that you go to a conference and you bump into somebody, or you see somebody from across the hallway, and you met them before. You don't remember the names, where they work, but you remember the vibe. Do you remember the vibe? Now, if it was a negative vibe, you may not remember why, but you remember they pissed you off. They got you frustrated, right? That emotional gut instinct is telling you this was a negative vibe with that person. That's it. You would have to really climb hard. They will have to really work hard now to get you back. The unfair advantage is what I do. I teach you to be able to control that, make that a positive one and an ongoing basis.
Okay, so we're going to end there. The 3 pillars: stand out. I'm always talking about that. Make an impact, but get personal. This was a lot of this conversation was about getting personal and how you can do that. So lots of nuggets of really solid information. Alon, I will have your connection in the show notes. So anyone that's listening, go to the show notes. That will be how you can get connected with Alon. We'll put a couple of other nice links in there as well. But I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on and having, I'll test you in a few weeks and see if you still remember my kids' names. But it helps, at least makes me feel better that like I've been subtly doing these things for a while. So
I'm taking notes.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Nick. Big hug.
Big hug. We're huggers. Big hug. For everyone that's listening, thank you for tuning in. Like us wherever you follow us, whether it's on YouTube or iTunes or Google Play or Spotify, whatever. But please be safe. The world is locking down again, so it's not that big a deal. Just put a mask on, wash your hands, be respectful of one another. And for Alon, my name is Nick Lamparelli. Until next time, thank you. Thanks, Alon.
Thank you.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of